Colonel Rashid Bahrami stepped out of the armored personnel carrier and surveyed the scene before him with a weary eye. Smoke rose from the smoldering ruins of an alien city, demolished in the latest clash between the Rye-Cache radicals and the Planetary Defense Alliance. Another textbook example of how infighting over religious ideology had turned this world into a graveyard of shattered cityscapes. Worst of all, despite the PDA's overwhelming military superiority, the Rye-Cache were beginning to even the battlefield with salvaged alien tech scavenged from who knows where. In the last year alone, they had brought down 6 of the PDA's star cruisers using salvaged point defense systems that could swat torpedoes out of the sky with terrifying efficiency. As Rashid picked his way over the rubble, alarms began going off inside the temporary command post hastily erected nearby. A Rye-Cache tech cult strike force had been detected moving towards the APC wreckage field, where the colonel's team had been dispatched to gather intelligence. Damn fanatics will stop at nothing to recover any tech that could give them an edge, Rashid growled as he hustled his soldiers into defensive positions. Prep the mortars and be ready for those zealot freaks too. No sooner were the words out of his mouth than a blinding green energy beam lanced out of the billowing smoke, slicing clean through the APC he'd arrived in and turning it into molten slag. Frantic soldiers scrambled for cover as they were pounded by sustained blasts of superheated plasma. Where in the seven hells did those monsters get disintegration weapons? The panicked lieutenant screamed over the deafening roar of destruction. The Rye-Cache techs had reverse-engineered some sort of unimaginably powerful directed energy tech, and they were cutting the PDA forces to pieces. Just then, another alarm blared, signaling the arrival of aerial reinforcements from the orbiting fleet. Sleek dropships sliced through the drifting smoke and flashed over the smoldering battlefield, counter-battery strikes from their rail cannons slamming into whatever emplacements were housing the energy weapons. But even as those deadly plasma beams winked out, smaller lances of green light winked on across the hazy cityscape, personal armaments packing the same terrifying firepower. We've got inbound from multiple vectors. Unknown weapon signatures came a frantic radio transmission over the din of raging battle. They're swarming us with those disintegrator rifle aces. Screens erupted over the comm as Rye-Cache infiltrators scythed through PDA troopers with contemptuous ease, laughing hysterically as they reduced their foes to molecular ash. In mere minutes, entire mechanized companies had been wiped out, clearing the path for the radicals' main assault. Just when all seemed lost, a bulky silhouette flashed down from the transport ships hovering above. The heavily armored figure slammed to earth, demolishing the ground around them with the impact. The distinctive winged skull sigil on its shoulder plate betrayed its origin not a standard PDA mech warrior, but one of the enigmatic human Techmasters. Master Chief Riza Alabama Habib on station growled a gravelly female voice over the comms. All surviving PDA forces rally to my position. We're going to burn these tech-worshipping freaks off this rock permanently. Despite being drastically outnumbered and outgunned by their Rye-Cache foes' fearsome and unprecedented new tech, the PDA troops were heartened by the arrival of one of humanity's elite Techmaster commandos. These unique super soldiers were renowned for pulling off the impossible in desperate battles where conventional forces failed. With a thought, Riza toggled on her armor's tactical HUD and immediately set about analyzing the energy signatures of the disintegrator weapons wielded by the Rye-Cache attackers. Streams of data flooded in as the Techmaster unit's sensors probed the unfamiliar alien rifles and heavy cannons, cross-referencing the energy patterns with records on every known weapon system. Damn, just when you think you've seen everything, Riza grunted as her HUD highlighted multiple fresh data packets being computed and incorporated into her suit's database. Based on the phased plasma wavelengths, these things work on the same principles as quantum destabilizers, but supercharged to the point where they straight-up disassemble molecular bonds. With a final series of calculations completed, Riza's neural interface confirmed it had mapped the resonance frequencies and output signatures of the Rye-Cache's mysterious and terrifying new weaponry. From there, it was only a matter of seconds for the hyper-advanced nanoforges inside her armor to begin manufacturing adaptive countermeasures and upgrades to neutralize this new threat. Reconfiguring deflector shielding to modulate against quantum vortex frequencies, she reported calmly, as her shields flickered and recalibrated to filter out the destabilizing energy blasts, prepping anti-resonance-resistant hull plating and uploading disruptor virus. Even as the crazed cultists focused a renewed wave of plasma bombardment on her position, their beams deflected harmlessly against an ever-shifting and solidifying barrier of exotic particles. Riza simply strode forward through the hellstorm, swatting aside stray ionized particles with sweeps of her armored gauntlets. "You know, I've seen a lot of alien tech get twisted into some nightmarish Frankenstein mashups," she quipped over the open comms, "but quantum disintegrator rifles really take the cake on this one. In any case, it won't be enough to stop me, freaks." Toggling an interface, Risa uploaded the countermeasures developed by her onboard systems directly into the databases of the remaining Allied forces and their combat vehicles. In moments, the tide began to turn as Rye cash beams started clanging harmlessly off armored hulls, and their own disruptor weapons fizzled into useless static. Desperate, they turned to unleash salvos of more conventional munitions and barrages of artillery fire, only to watch those primitive warheads detonate in midair thanks to Risa's automated multispectral counter-batteries that detected and jammed their detonation sequences. "The kid gloves come off now," Risa snarled as she unsheathed arm-mounted lancer cannons and let fly a torrent of superheated plasma that instantly incinerated whole phalanxes of fanatical tech cultists. "It's been a solid workout getting to grips with your little quantum death show toys. But as I've said before, we humans are the real masters of repurposed alien tech." With the battle's momentum fully reversed, the Techmaster waded forth in an unstoppable storm of devastation, annihilating the Raikash's core strike team by uploading hellishly effective viral armor overrides that locked down all their weapons and power systems. In less than half an hour, the Radicals' feared disintegration tech advantage had been rendered moot, and their forces obliterated. By the time she linked up with the surviving PDA armored regiments and their air cavalry, exhausted troops were already gawking at the mangled wrecks of the alien hardware her armor had reduced to smoldering junk. That was incredible, her company liaison breathed as he tentatively approached, sweeping pieces of debris out of his way. "Sir, I don't even recognize half of what you engaged out there." "You wouldn't," Risa grunted as she retrieved her helmet and surveyed the scene, her heads-up display still running new calculations as it adapted to more intel gathered in the field. It was some kind of offshoot disintegrator tech the crazy Rye cache cobbled together, but the core principles are very similar to certain Zorvaxian quantum nullifiers and Kelgrian antimatter cascaders. Once you crack that initial code, it just becomes a matter of applying countermeasure protocols from existing databases and adapting that framework. She shrugged, already shifting her focus to analyzing more fragments of debris. For humans, alien technology is like a massive puzzle that takes time to assemble, but once you find the common threads connecting the individual pieces, the whole picture comes into focus. That's why we're indispensable assets in conflicts like this. We intuitively see the connective patterns underlying even the strangest applied sciences and death tech mashups. Rashid exchanged a look with the shell-shocked lieutenant at his side. Even for a veteran of the Outer Colonies campaigns, seeing one of the legendary human Techmasters in action was a sobering reminder of just how far beyond the rest of the galaxy their species had advanced. "You make untangling tech developed by unknowable alien civilizations over cosmic eons sound so simple," the colonel said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Yet we're talking about weapons capable of unraveling the fundamental forces holding matter together." "Simple is relative," Risa said, with a casual shrug of her armored shoulders. She gestured at the holographic schematic floating over her forearm, alien glyph cascading across the shifting calculations. The core tenets and mathematical frameworks underlying all quantum vortex and high-density energy manipulation are actually fairly intuitive once you decode the initial principles. From there, it's just a matter of reverse engineering the hardware and optimizing countermeasure implementation. Toggling a command, she highlighted an entire section of the complex formulas detailing the molecular distortion fields and cascading resonances generated by the Rye cache disintegrators. "See this morphic frequency matrix? It maps out the modulated phased quarks that destabilize interatomic bonds at a subatomic level. Other species tend to treat these principles as unknowable occult thanatological pseudosciences." A cocky grin played at the edge of her mouth as she glanced over at the stunned colonel. But to a Techmaster's mind, it's just another exotic flavor of applied physics waiting to be cracked, then nullified or assimilated. Rashid's gaze followed Risa's as she summoned holographic recordings of the battle, the disintegrator beams peppering her kinetic shields with dazzling arrays of force before dissipating against her countermeasures. You're effectively dismantling and reverse engineering these doomsday weapons in real time," he said in disbelief. "And from the looks of it, your armor can not only maintain cohesion under that quasi-molecular onslaught, but rapidly analyze and adapt defenses to neutralize the exotic effects." Risa grinned wolfishly behind her faceplate. It took the colonel and his officers a moment to pick up on the prideful, almost mocking tone in her voice. Like I said, simple physics. Once you master it. So in essence, Rashid continued slowly, you essentially gained the ability to identify, analyze, and negate their advantage in the span of a pitched combat scenario. You didn't just nullify the disintegrators but reverse-engineered their core functions well enough to assimilate their principles into your own nanoforges and defense matrices. These relics of ours aren't just hunks of Ceramacry's armor plating and Xenobuilt phasic shields, the Techmaster said, with a cavalier gesture at her gunmetal-gray exoskeleton. She rapped a knuckle against her breastplate, relishing the chance to flaunt the sheer superiority of human technomic sciences. My suit is more akin to a semi-sentient supercomputer meshed into a hyper-advanced foundry platform. Risa tapped a series of commands into her gauntlet as streams of hyper-compressed data spilled across her multi-layered heads-up display. I can feed the resonance frequencies, energy matrices, and even some rudimentary thermodynamic readouts from those disintegrators into my databases. From there, it's a simple case of modeling simulations and counter-solutions, like any technology developed from first principles. She leaned back on one heel, the Techmaster's armored bulk casting an imposing shadow across her awestruck allies. I'll spend the next couple days deconstructing, stress testing, and refining those countermeasures while we salvage more intact Rye cache hardware to study. By the time I disembark, I'll have that exotic tech completely reverse-engineered and systematized. You're saying you're going to have fully mastered their technology for yourself? Rashid was almost afraid of the answer. He had commanded troops alongside human special operators before, men and women possessing almost mythic degrees of skill and combat prowess. But this was something else entirely. Mastered Risa actually chuckled as the schematics morphed again on her HUD, running new simulations of Rye cache beam rifles assaulting her defenses, only to be deflected and redirected against holographic enemies. I wouldn't say mastered exactly, but close enough to repurpose and replicate any applications, improve on its shortcomings, and maybe push its potentials even further. Her helmeted head tilted to one side as she watched the last hologram simulation unfold, enemy energy blasts being absorbed and refracted into sleeker, optimized projections that cut through solid durasteel like a plasma torch through butter. This is what humans do best, Colonel, solving the galaxy's impossible tech puzzles, one shattered mystery at a time. From untranslatable alien cyber warfare matrices to reanimated carnivorous terraforming nanoswarms, we've stared into the abyss of a billion harrowing scientific brinkmanships, and every time, without fail, we learn to decipher their secrets just a little more thoroughly. She turned to face him, the battered and scorched insignia on her shoulder guard glinting proudly. That's the whole reason humanity was uplifted by the Ascended Ones in the first place. Our innate drive to tear apart and understand any incomprehensible science or technology until it can be mastered and bent to our purposes. When the progenitors wanted a lineage of apex innovators capable of surmounting any obstacle, no matter how hazardous or esoteric, they found the ideal candidates in our species. With a flex of her armored gauntlet, Risa triggered one final shift in the holographic display, a dizzying kaleidoscope of alien codes and algorithms that defied any logic or coherent framework. For the briefest instant, the colonel caught glimpses of eldritch machinery and stellar flare weapon systems amidst the churning ciphers. Then, as quickly as the phantasmagoria appeared, it reordered itself into structured matrices conforming to vaguely identifiable mathematical principles. Even the most occult technologies worshipped as unknowable by lesser species are nothing more than scientific puzzles, waiting to be cracked and subsumed by a Techmaster's computational battleframe, Risa stated, equal parts pride and cool professional dispassion. We fear no physics, no esoteric metaphysical dimensions or hyperspatial anomalies, only the imperative to map and integrate each fresh mystery into our ever-expanding databanks. With a thought, she powered down the holograms and retracted her weapons back into their armored housings. Come on, Colonel. Let's collect as much of those disintegrator relics as we can haul back to HQ. By the time the eggheads get their hands on the replicated schematics, we'll have a whole new vector of bleeding-edge Thanametrics platforms to field across the warfront. As the Techmaster set off across the shattered cityscape to begin gathering materials with her squad, Colonel Rashid remained transfixed for a long moment, digesting the full magnitude of her words. It was more than mere technological superiority, it was the embodiment of an unnaturally rapacious will to deconstruct and assimilate every enigma science threw at them, no matter how transcendent or dreadful, until the mysteries obeyed the cold calculus of human logic. "Forget the disintegrators," he muttered under his breath. This is our edge. The true reason we make such indispensable allies in any interstellar conflict. The simple, chilling audacity to stare into the maw of even the most blasphemous alien sciences and tear them asunder until their workings could be exploited to human advantage. With that, the Techmasters' parting words echoed through Rashid's mind like the whispered promises of omnicidal apex predators. "We fear no physics.